Today on Real Talk with Coach Morton and Friends, got a seasoned veteran for you guys. Coach Charles Ryan has been the NCAA D2 National Coach of the Year 2 times. I first became familiar with you at Academy of Art. I mean, I'd never heard of that program. You could completely put that on the map. Had stops at Alabama State with Richie Bean, and now he's at University of California. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, man, happy to have you, man. Anytime I can have somebody of your caliber, that not only has accomplished a lot, but the knowledge base, man. I listen to those calls. I listen to the Zoom calls, and the attention to detail that I hear you talk about, especially when it comes to hurdles and just training in general, I can appreciate. So thank you. I want to get into it. How'd you get started in the sport?
In the sport, period. Wow, that's crazy. So when I was a little kid, I did every kind. I did literally every sport: football, baseball, basketball, soccer, swimming. Like, I did everything. And so track was actually kind of by accident. I was bored with baseball, and I just needed something new to do. And you know how it is, you're the fastest kid in your school, so you think you can run track. And so I went out for one of the local track clubs, which here in the Bay Area, it was called Berkeley East Bay, one of the bigger clubs in the area at the time. And I thought I was fast, so I thought I ran 100 meters. It took me one practice to find out, nah, you ain't actually that fast. You don't run the 100 meters. And so I ended up doing the 400 and picking up the hurdles. And the only reason I started hurdling is because I had a crush on a girl who was 2 years older than me, and she was a hurdler. And so she'd be over on the other side of the track practicing basically by herself. And I'm like, well, I want to go over there. And they're like, well, that's hurdle practice. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to go hurdle then. And that's how that happened. Like, that's literally how I started hurdling.
So obviously you ended up going to UCLA and then transferred to South Carolina.
Correct. I signed a full ride to go to UCLA coming out of high school in 1999. John Smith recruited me to UCLA, and once he got pushed out of UCLA and decided to do the HSI group full-time professional, I wasn't really happy with that transition, obviously. And so like many kids, I went to UCLA. UCLA is a fantastic school. My mother went there, my aunt, my uncle. Like, I was a legacy student to go there, but I didn't care about the school at the time. I just wanted to go run for Coach Smith. So when he got put out, I was like, well, I'm out. And so I ended up transferring to South Carolina because Alan Johnson and Terrence Trammell were training in South Carolina, and I was one of the top hurdlers in the country. And I'm like, well, if that's where they train, that's where I should be training. So that's how that all happened.
Nice. So how'd you well, I was asking what made you get started in coaching, and who have been some of your mentors that kind of helped guide you along the way or help you out?
Yeah, so the coaching thing was a pure accident. What happened was, so when I was in the middle of my transfer, there were really 2 places that I was considering transferring to. I wanted to go to South Carolina. I was focused and bent on going to South Carolina for those reasons that I just named. But Vince Anderson at the time was at the University of Tennessee coaching with the men's program. Justin Gatlin was there and a bunch of other people. And he was the only other coach, the only other program that I seriously considered. Truth be told, I loved Vince. Like, if it was just down to my transfer experience and who I really wanted to run for, it was Vince. The problem was, South Carolina was the better hurdle program. It had better history with hurdles. And me being, youthful and not understanding the nuances of any of this, I went where the big names were. And, not to knock, anything that went down in South Carolina, it was ultimately served me very well. But the person I wanted to run for was Vince Anderson. And so when I graduated in 2004, I immediately, graduation was on a Saturday. I put my stuff in my car on Sunday and drove to Knoxville, Tennessee to train with Vince for the 2004 Olympic trials, which I had qualified for. I was homeless. I was literally living in my car for about a good 2 months because I couldn't afford, nothing. I just needed to get ready. I was trying to stack up money to go to the trials, which were in Sacramento that year. It was a home trials for me. So I'm like, I'm gonna get right. I'm gonna go to Sacramento. I knew I wasn't gonna make the Olympic team. Like I wasn't good enough. Alan and Terrence and too many people were still hot at the time. But my goal was, if I can just make the finals at the Olympic trials, someone will pay me a contract. I can go to Europe. I can do all this stuff. And making the finals was a relatively decent goal because I had finished 12th at USA's in 2002. And so I'm like, well, if I can get 12th, I can definitely get top 8, right? So that was the plan. And what ended up happening was I tore my hamstring in practice maybe 2-3 weeks before the Olympic trials. And I was bartending on the side for money. And so when I knew I couldn't go to the trials anymore, I took the money that I had stacked up and decided to get an apartment. Well, Vince emerged from the Olympic trials, came back to Tennessee with the Texas A&M job in his pocket. So it was just a crazy time. I had just relocated. I had just signed this lease, and now I'm hurt. And I'm like, I can't afford, to move again. Vince told me that I was, free to come to Texas with him, if I wanted to. I was like, man, I can't afford that. And the truth is, I was super depressed about my leg anyway. Yeah. So I started coaching 9-year-old little kids in the city of Knoxville for some extra money that summer. And all of the kids in my group ended up going to the Junior Olympics. So the club, which was Knoxville Track Club, the club asked me after that summer, to move up and take over the high school group the following winter for indoor. So this is 2004 into 2005 indoor. And I did that. And I had some professional disagreements with the way that the club was being run. And so I made the decision that summer in 2005 to break off and start my own program. And that angered a lot of people at the time. I'm 23, 24 years old, and there's only been one track club in the city for 50 years. And who's this dude who ain't from here, who's not one of us, that's going to come in here and change orders? And I'm like, look, it's not hard to run a track club, and I'm going to do it my way because I think I know how to do it a better way. And so I broke off, paid my little $50 to start a club, got my 501c3, and started an educational project is where I saw it. And it was the premise of it was you couldn't run for me if you weren't in high school. You couldn't run for me if you weren't seriously trying to get yourself into school. And so we had tutoring programs. We did, in some cases, we did parent teacher conferences at the local high schools. It was a total academic push through track and field. And we put 17 of 18 kids into school in 3 years. All of them on some sort of scholarship, D1, D2, whatever. And so we broke a lot of state records, broke a lot of national records, actually. And, at that point, I felt like it was time for me to try to move on. I didn't really want to be in Knoxville too much longer. And I had some opportunities coming up where people were wanting to talk to me about collegiate jobs because of the reputation that my kids had helped me build in the Southeast. Long story short, I ended up taking a job at Louisiana Tech, and that was 2007. And that was my first venture into the NCAA world. And Sean Jackson hired me and he was the associate head coach under Gary Stanley down at Louisiana Tech. Gary's still at Louisiana Tech, and Sean currently is at TCU coaching sprints and jumps.
Well, what would you, did you do any kind of formal coaching education during that time, or was it more just?
Yeah, I did. My very first formal coaching education class, I did my USATF level 1 in Atlanta. That had to have been, golly, I want to say it was like 2005 or 2006
Okay.
I remember distinctly doing that. Wendy Trevelyan was one of the instructors there, and she's a fabulous lady. And I remember going down there, and I was hyped. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to get real. I'm going to go down to Atlanta for the weekend and get this, get my knowledge up and all this stuff. level one is crazy because I sat in the level 1 class, and I'm sitting there like, y'all don't know this stuff already? Like, this is so basic. Like, it was really, I was really upset by it. And, at the time, like, I don't know, like, I'm thinking, like, it's going to be some next level stuff. And what Wendy had told me in the thing was that this was literally made for entry level people who didn't understand anything. And so she told me, make sure you go to level 2. You have to do level 1 before you can go to level 2. And so USATF level 2, which is a week-long course, that's the one. Like, that's the one that really had a profound effect on me. That's the one where I really felt like I learned some things. Yeah. Level 1, I was in there. I was actually upset. Like, I was in there like, how y'all working with kids and y'all don't know this stuff? Like, this is very, very basic. But, you got to crawl before you walk, right? So
yeah.
I did USA level 2. And then in a couple years later, I did USA level 3, which is also IAAF level 5. So I have the top certifications for sprints and hurdles, and I did level 2 twice. Actually, I actually ended up doing level 2 for jumps as well. So I got all my certs out the way. I can't do distance and all that stuff, so I wasn't about to take those courses. But yeah, pretty good.
So now obviously you got your coaching back, and you're in college coaching now. So how would you characterize your approach to training sprinters and hurdlers? And from a biomotor ability standpoint, is there anything you try to prioritize during that process?
For me, I don't, and people hear me talk about this often, I don't subscribe to any particular quote unquote training theory. I don't understand that particular mentality when it comes to what we do for a living. I believe that each kid is their own individual puzzle for me to solve, and therefore for me to be beholden to any particular, you must do it this way, we must train this way, it just doesn't serve me very well. I understand the people in this game that have their program. They're like, nope, this is what we do here. At this school, we train like this. I get it. I totally get it. And a lot of that, the reason it works at a lot of those places is because those coaches have such a huge reputation and always are in the position where they're getting the top 5 recruiting class, top 10 recruiting class. Well, when that kind of stuff, when you have that kind of talent coming in the door every single year, no matter what, you can burn a few and it's all right. I've never worked at a place where I've had that luxury, right? Like I'm at Louisiana Tech scraping and fighting, going head to head with, the SECs and LSUs and all that other stuff. So I can't screw up anybody, or else my little baby recruiting class that I have isn't going to flounder into anything. I'm at Division II at Academy of Art, where we, definitely don't have the luxury of messing up on recruits. And then, at Alabama State, same thing. So I'm in the Power 5 now with this new position at Berkeley, but it's the same, like my mentality hasn't changed with the jobs that I've gotten over the years. Like, I still believe I have to train the athlete, not the event. I still believe that I have to be creative enough and flexible enough to bend myself and bend my knowledge and bend what needs to happen with each kid. Now, if that means I got to stay at the track from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., well, that happens. I mean, that's a reality that I've had at almost every school I've ever worked at. If I got to have 5 different hurdle practices in a day, so be it. Like, whatever it takes. If my last year at Louisiana and Alabama State, it got to a point where I had the 100-meter kids, but I would usually have to have 3 different sessions of 100-meter training because the kids were so different. And it wouldn't have been functional for them to train together because kid X and his problems are different from girl Y and her problems. Yeah. And if I put them all together, messaging gets lost, right? So, I don't subscribe to any of that. I can do speed and power models. I can do endurance-based models. I can do short to long, long to short. whatever. Like,
Whatever needed.
you know, and you know, with the situation that we're all in now, with this COVID situation, with the pandemic, I think people are gonna have to get real creative in how they develop their athletes, because the bottom line is, whatever you believe in, your normal order is not gonna happen this year. Like, whatever your normal plans are, you better find a way to change them up and get creative, because they're absolutely not gonna be able to happen.
I mean, what you just said, that whole thing is something that I've over this time off, I've been listening to a lot of Zoom calls and things, and I can appreciate. I'm hearing more. I'm hearing less cookie cutter answers. You know, and my whole time I've been coaching, I've never really subscribed to a particular system per se. So it was, you know, I listen to people and I'm like, man, maybe I'm doing it wrong. You know, I almost feel like I need to be doing some sort of a system, but I'm like, I can't, cause certain, you know, obviously I'm giving what's needed, and certain kids aren't ready for certain stuff or can't do certain things. So I can appreciate when I hear answers like that, like, you know, you got to give what's needed for that particular situation, for that particular kid. And like you said, I mean, as far as with the COVID situation, I'm looking at it like, I always tell people when it comes to periodization, is about who can periodize when there's a monkey wrench thrown in the mix, and that's going to throw everything off. Can you still do what you're supposed to do at that point? Because COVID it's about to cause some, you know, like I said, people are going to have to really get creative.
That's right. And, you know, just like anything else, it's just like when our industry changes a rule, right? Or throws some kind of new adjustment in there that we got to adjust to, that comes to timelines or whatever else. The best coaches always find a way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just what happens. So no one is happy about COVID, nor should they be. I think a lot of people need to be taking it a lot more serious. But it's just going to be another thing. It's going to be the next thing that highlights who's really good at their jobs and who isn't. And, you know, some people are scared of that. Honestly, I don't want anybody to get sick, but I am up to the challenge. I'm interested in the challenge of the situation.
Yeah, I was watching Athletics LLC. It was a couple of weeks ago when I was one of the first episodes, and you were like, I think you guys were talking about basically like coaching during COVID and recruiting, and you were like, you know, you're not going to be able to do all this, you know, traveling and going to all these places to see recruits face to face or flying them, whatever. They're going to have to know how to recruit without all that. And
yeah,
you know, that kind of brought a smile to my face, because that's what I'm already doing. I don't have the biggest recruiting budget. So that's true though. You know, they're gonna have to know how to do this thing a different way with COVID being a reality.
Oh, absolutely, man. This thing's got the whole industry on its head. I mean, every part of it: recruiting, budgets, travel, meet schedules, all of it. It's all going to have to change. And, you know, maybe it has to change permanently, maybe it doesn't, but it definitely is going to be changing right now. So there's a lot of skill acquisition that people don't have, that they're going to have to step up real fast.
Yeah. Change the subject to, I was listening to the Hurdles Zoom call, and it was one, you know, set particularly for women, 7 steps.
Mm-hmm. Oh man,
now
I hate it.
I was listening. You know, I read biomechanical research where they, you know, in the 100 they were saying how stride frequency. I think it was 2011 World Championships, where they said frequency was the biggest determinant of who won the women's race. So I'm trying to figure out, is stride, are we starting to overemphasize too much stride length? Like, obviously we don't want to be, you know, short and choppy and restrict our range of motion too much. But are people starting to, I guess, negate or not emphasize stride frequency, or forget about it and emphasize stride length?
I think, like all issues in sport, I think that the knowledge and the perception that people have with all things gets lost in what's the new hot trend or the new buzzword, right? So, you know, USATF High Performance, Ralph Mann and the crew, they've been preaching frontside mechanics forever, as they should, because it's vital to the survival and development of sprinters. But it's also become a buzzword. And because it's become a buzzword, some people have gotten lost in the frontside mechanics fight, which is also by nature the stride length fight, and gone too far with it to the point where they're overemphasizing, to the point where they're teaching kids to reach, where they're trying to squeeze every little bit out of the stride length that they can find, and not paying enough attention to the frequency aspect. I think that is absolutely a thing. And it's, it's like I said, it's trendy. It happens. You can't lose the importance of frequency because you're focused on length, or vice versa. Because the fact of the matter is, if you want to make kid X faster, you have to be able to do both. Yes, if you increase their stride length and the frequency doesn't change, they will get faster. Yes, if you increase their frequency without their ability to cover ground, they will get faster. But the real job is to do both.
Yeah.
The real job is to find improvements in both areas. And that's where you see the big, big drops in exponential growth. So frequency should not be ignored ever. And when it comes to the 7-step approach for women's hurdles, I can understand why a lot of men and a lot of boys and a lot of coaches of those people see a trend of 7-step and try to adjust to it. I get it. I understand it. But there is no list of people on the women's side who's been out there winning medals and breaking records doing 7-step on the women's side. So I don't understand why that trend has started to bleed over into women's hurdles. It's largely ridiculous. And there are so few women and almost zero girls who have the size and strength capabilities to even pull that off. Just because you can take 7 steps and jump over a hurdle does not mean it's to be done. You know what I mean? So, for me, when I've encountered recruits that come out of high school doing 7-step and end up on my team, I always change them back to 8. When I had the only professional athlete that I've ever had that went down that transition is Isabel Peterson. And if you're not familiar with Isabel is a Norwegian hurdler who's an absolute superstar in her country. Isabel's very talented. She's very good. In 2016, she ran in Rio, and she was being coached by Altus at the time. I'm not sure who at Altus was coaching her. I know it was not primarily Andreas, but she was at Altus. She had a really good record as a junior athlete, and all of her PRs had come from the 7-step approach. Well, she ended up coming down to Montgomery, Alabama with me in the spring of 2017. So she was late to the party. She actually completed her indoor season with her former crew, and she wasn't happy about her indoor season's performance, and I agreed to take a look at her. And, the first thing I saw her do was come out of a block over 7 steps of hurdles. And I said in my head, I called her agent that day, and I was like, man, listen, her start's going to have to change. And he's like, I know, but she's, she loves that start, and she's always, that's where she's comfortable. I was like, well, I hear you, and me and her don't know each other yet, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to change, or I can't do this job, because she can't run world class like this. And so it took me March, April, May, June, 4 months of building trust with the girl. And we improved her speed, and we improved her technique, and we improved different things. But I knew that start had to change. I had to wait until the Monaco Diamond League race, where she got destroyed and got dead last. And this is 3 weeks before the World Championships in 2017, before I was in a position where she could hear me about her start. And so I flipped her start to 8 steps 3 weeks before the 2017 World Championships. And it was scary. And it was, to her credit, she trusted me and listened to me about that. And she ended up, putting together the best races of her life at the World Championships. And if not, you go watch the tape of the semifinals in London 2017. She was absolutely destroying Kenny Harrison in that semifinal and pulls her hamstring going over hurdle 8. Kenny comes back on her with an amazing comeback. Comes back on her. Isabel pulls her hamstring over hurdle 8. Kenny nips her at the finish, and Kenny gets the last final spot. Isabel misses that final. If Isabel makes that final, she's, basically a god in her country. So, and the next year, she ended up having a bunch of PRs indoors and making the World Championship indoor final. And then later on that season in 2018, broke her national record outdoors running, I think it was 12:72 or something like that. So it was all about her start. Like Izzy with her former coaches was taught. She was a very good technician. She was good in between. For her, it was all about the setup and getting that setup right. Is vital. It's vital to every aspect of sprinting, but definitely for the hurdles. And the 7th step for the women, I don't see it.
So when you saw her 7-stepping, like, I know you said it was wrong. Well, what in particular was wrong about, like, what did you see? Was it
the problem was she wasn't strong enough or tall enough to be consistent with the acceleration pattern or the velocity she was creating. So if you take 10 starts, if she did 10 starts with seven steps, maybe 2 or 3 of them she would hit really, really well. Mm-hmm. And be in a position, like the whole premise of it, right? Hurdles is a fixed event when it comes to strides. You got 8 to the first hurdle, you got 9 more hurdles with 3 steps in between, so that's 27 steps, and then you got 5 or 6 steps to the finish line. Like, it's a fixed event. So the simple theory is, well, if I could take 1 step out of it, that should be faster, right? Well, maybe, maybe, but if you're reaching and blocking and slowing down to create that extra space, then no, it's not going to be faster. And that, to your original question, that's a stride length versus frequency issue, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can cover more ground. I can get to my takeoff point, which is roughly 2 meters. The women's hurdles is 13 meters from the start line. So I can get to 11 meters in 7 strides. Now think about that. Like most elite men's 100-meter runners are taking 6.5 to 7 steps from 0 to 10. So you're a female and you're trying to get to 11 meters in 7 steps. It's really, really difficult to do, okay? And most people cannot do it in a way that's going to be advantageous for them to do. So like I said, Izzy could get the mark. She could get to the mark. But 70-80% of the time she was reaching and overstriding to do it. And when you're competing in the hardest event on the planet, like, you don't have time for those kind of mistakes. And so when she missed it, it was really, really bad. I mean, hell, Lolo Jones tried to go 7 steps for, I think, 2 seasons. And there's a tape, but she was running at Drake, and she messed it up so badly that she ended up taking 9 steps to the first hurdle. You can't do stuff like that. So, like, if that's even a possibility that kind of mistake can happen, it is not to be done. Like, just figure out how to get the 8 in. There's 20 different ways to get the 8 in.
Man, that kind of goes to my next question. You just gave me another example, though, with her. I was going to ask you with Vashti Thomas, what were some of her natural physical gifts and natural weaknesses? And how did you go about kind of, I guess, amplifying her strengths and improving upon her weaknesses?
Vashti Thomas is the most naturally gifted athlete I have ever worked with in my life. Wow. There are no natural weaknesses that Vashti Thomas possesses. Vashti Thomas is a monster of a talent. Like, you're talking about a girl from California who in high school was the best in the state at 3 different events: hurdles, long jump, triple jump. I'm talking about this girl she jumped low 6 meters. She jumped 42 feet and some change in the triple jump in high school. And she ran 13 flat in high school, okay? You talking about somebody, there's nothing wrong with this girl. Like, she's built perfectly, tall, long legs. She can sprint. A lot of people don't realize that she can sprint until I got my hands on her at RU and made her sprint. I mean, you're talking about she Vashti goes to Texas A&M. She's on national. She contributed to all the national championships they won at the time, and she was the #1 hurdler in the country when she graduated. But she was also the #1 jumper. So A&M recruited her primarily as a jumper who was going to run hurdles on the side, and she really wanted to hurdle and jump on the side. Oh. And Vashti is just one of these outside the box kids when it comes to school. Like Vashti's dream was to be a tattoo artist. Now, if your dream is to be a tattoo artist, you're probably not going to do very well in, science and math classes, right? Like that's not your interest. It's not even remotely your desire. It doesn't matter how smart you are. And the girl was very smart. She just wasn't interested. Mm-hmm. And so, she was having some academic problems. And so they decided that, they were going to let her, because this was before the transfer portal, right? You had to get permission to dip. And so they were happy to let her go, but they also didn't want to compete with her at all, compete against her, because she's too good. So I just so happened to be at Division II at the time, and Vince Anderson, who's a friend of mine, called me and was like, Chuck, listen, Vashti wants to draw and she wants to transfer. I was like, done. That was literally the conversation. I was like, done. What? Just send me the paperwork. It's fine. And so literally I knew Vash because I was Jackie Coward's coach in high school. So I knew who Vashti was. We had met a bunch of times, just on the high school club circuit. And I got her number and I called her. I said, Vashti, this is Charles Bryant with Academy of Art in San Francisco. And Vince told me that they're releasing you. She's like, no, I want to come right now. What do I need to do? That was the whole call. That was it. And so once we got her on campus, she went in her 2 years that she spent, at RU. Her PR in the hurdles was still 13.0 from high school. She ended up running 12.7 in a collegiate uniform and ultimately 12.60 later that summer, running for the World University Games and set the World University Games record. She won the indoor national championship in the 200, beating the two former champions in the event. And outdoor, she set the outdoor national record for Division II in a losing effort to Danielle Williams. Vashti ran 22.72 and lost the race to Danielle Williams. Okay. She also won the long jump indoor and outdoor. She got second in the triple jump and third in the triple jump indoor and outdoor. She ran, I want to say she ran 11.3 in the 100 that year at some point. There's nothing that this girl cannot do. And she ran, on all the relays. So natural, nothing, there's nothing wrong with that child at all. She was a monster. And she's, her biggest gift actually was her mentality. When people go back and dissect how we won those national championships, there was only 6 girls in the building. And Vashti was obviously the catalyst that drove us to that championship. But the crazy schedule that she was running, she asked for that. When I sat down with the team in the fall of 2012, going into the 2013 team, in our first team meeting, I said to the whole team, I said, ladies, we're going to win the national championship this year. And if that scares any of you, you need to get up and walk out. Because this was our first year in the NCAA. This was our first year existing. And half of them looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, no. I'm dead serious. This is going to happen. The question is, who's going to be on the plane? And as soon as that meeting broke, Vashti comes to my office and she's like, Coach, I want to do all my events. I was like, well, you're going to do all your events. She's like, no. This girl wanted to do, at the indoor championship, 60 hurdles, 200, long jump, triple jump, and ready to run the 4x4 if we needed her. She asked to do that. Okay? Outdoors, 4x1, 100 hurdles, 200, long jump, triple jump, and was ready for the 4x4. She wanted to do that. Her whole thing was, if I'm going to be in D2, I want to be the best D2 athlete that anyone's ever seen. I was like, well, you are that. So like she, man, listen. And from the long jump perspective, a lot of people forget this because she came so close but didn't happen. In 2012, she had qualified for the Olympic trials, and so we went up to Eugene, and she was supposed to do the hurdles on the first weekend and do the long jump on the second weekend. Somehow, some way, she got taken off the hurdle list because she had the qualifying standard. She got taken out of the hurdle list to let some, let's say, old school veterans with names who didn't have the qualifying standard into the meet. They bumped her off. And we were not happy about it. So she has to sit there for 5 days, pissed off, getting ready to long jump, which at the time, the long jump was her secondary event. Her PR going into the Olympic trial was only 6:21. She goes out there in qualifying and jumps 6:97, 22:10 and a quarter. Okay? Goes into the final, sitting number 1. She's ahead of Reese. She's ahead of everybody. Brittany jumps out her mind. Chelsea Hayes jumps out her mind. Janae Delos jumps out her mind. Tiana wasn't jumping in that competition. She had decided to be a pure sprinter that year in 2012. So all 3 women jumped 7 meters plus, and Vashti had 3 toe scratches that were easily going to put her on that team. But she finished 5th in that competition and just barely missed the Olympic team in the long jump. So, I mean, that girl can do anything, man. Like, and the only reason she isn't still competing is because you know, the business side of the sport. So when Vashti came out, when she was done with the eligibility in 2013, she came out the same year Brianna Rollins came out. So Brianna Rollins was the hot hurdler on the block and deserved her contract, right? You don't really get real money in the jumps these days. But Vashti had 3 world-class marks when she was done with college. She had 697 in the long jump. She had 1260 in the hurdles, and she ran 22.7 in the 200. And nobody signed her. Nobody. Nike, Adidas, nobody gave her any money. Danielle Williams, who was in Division II, not as good as a hurdler, but a better sprinter, right? Just by a little bit. Danielle's Jamaican. So the Caribbeans, she was able to get a contract. So Danielle got her contract with Adidas. Brianna got her contract with Nike. A bunch of other people got signed there. Corey Carter came out that year, got her Jordan deal, all this stuff, right? Vashti did not get a contract. So she spent 2 years trying to be a pro athlete with no contract, no money, no nothing. And it was ridiculous. Like, and we're living in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like, her paying bills is impossible. And so ultimately, she left the sport, and she's a police. She's a San Francisco police officer, and you know, doing her thing and you know, living her best life. But don't get it twisted. One of the best athletes on the planet right now is still in the prime of her life. I mean, 2 years later, 2 years after NCAA eligibility, Danielle Williams is the world champion in the hurdles, 2015. So, like, it was all about her not being able to survive the business of it.
And that's,
you know,
something to be said about
we would see something different.
Something wrong with the system. I mean, y'all talked about that on Athletics LLC. That's a whole nother conversation, but
yeah.
That's crazy that somebody of that caliber is not, everything should be paid for. She should be trying to figure out how she's going to win a gold medal at the Olympics or the World Championship.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous.
And in her case, she could have won a medal in the hurdles. She could have won a medal in the jumps.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, Jeremy Fisher saw her, and he was like, "Oh my God!" Like, you know, like everybody saw it except the people with the pocketbooks. So
that's crazy. So, actually, what do you think? I'm going to talk from the standpoint of a fan. What do you think our sport is missing Because we're probably the most participated sport.
Yep, us and soccer.
We're running as fast as we've ever run. Why is the sport not more popular here in the States?
A bunch of different reasons, in my opinion. I think over the years, and don't get twisted, it used to be, right? It really did used to be popular. One, I think the ball sports, football and basketball in particular, have intelligently figured out, their marketing strategies, and obviously are backed by, billions and billions of dollars. And Americans like balls, Americans like violence, Americans like to see, those kind of combative sports. Hence why baseball's popularity has fallen down a little bit, and hockey's, lives. I mean, the whole reason that the people who like NASCAR watch NASCAR, one of them at least, are sitting there like, at any moment somebody could crash. You know what I mean? Like it's the spectacle of, what is going to come. And so I think, there are little things that we could do. I think the number one thing that our sport is missing is perspective. I've said this for years. We need to cater to the people who really care about our sport and stop trying to act as if we're going to become these other things. We're not a ball sport. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do that are going to ingratiate ourselves. We shouldn't be trying to fit ourselves into these boxes that we don't belong in. We should be doubling down, tripling down on the people who really care about what we do. And it has to be said, the fallen stars, the doping scandals over the last 20 to 30 years have taken a lot of the admiration away from our sport. But from the American perspective, what can we do? We can do simple things. Like, I don't know, we could have open liquor sales at all track meets. More people would show up if they could buy a beer. When you go to Europe, those stadiums are packed to the gills. It don't matter if it's an A-level meet, B-level meet, C-level meet. It's a carnival. Like it's an extravaganza, and you can buy drinks everywhere. Okay, so one, you should be selling concessions and drinks at all the meets. Seriously. Number two, you have to find a way to shorten the schedules so you're not sitting at a place for 5 to 6 hours. No one likes to do that. Okay, that's not fun. It's not cute. It's not cool. But if you can create a festival type atmosphere around these meets and make it a 2.5 hour experience like everything else is, I think that fits into the comfortability of what everybody's trying to do. I think from the American perspective, we have to learn how to tell better stories. The only stories that get told about our sport are the drug scandals. There are amazing people in our sport. There are amazing backstories all across the board. Sprints, jumps, throws, distance. Like the people and the personalities, their stories are not told. They're not even remotely attempted to be told, let alone told well. And I think that when you have an individual sport, we're an individual sport just like golf is an individual sport, right? But the golfers, their backstories. Like golf does an incredible job of going out of their way to highlight why you should care about watching Tiger Woods, why you should care about watching Fowler or, all these other, top flight people. So storytelling, opportunities for the right people to be in front of the camera, and change, the mentality of the fan. Like lean into the people that really, really care. Stop trying to cater, to the larger audience that does not care about what y'all are doing at all. Yeah. That's where I sit with it. And that's a pro track discussion, right? That's the top level stuff. The NCAA level, there's a whole bunch of ideas about, how you could change that. And actually we've debated some of that on the LLC show. Actually, the one that's coming out today is a hilarious debate about that. But we really have to do a better job of putting the best of our people out front and getting them identified and making the public care about them.
Yeah.
And that's that's the way you could do it. You could create like a draft model and do all of that. You could do that, but in order to do stuff like that, you need to have advertising and money to back people's opportunities to compete like that. And it's been tried in smaller attempts, and those meets were fun, but the way it was set up, it just wasn't sustainable. So just gotta put it out there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there needs to be some narrative in our sport behind some of these meets, whether it be a rivalry, whether it be a backstory. I just remember Mo Green and Donovan Bailey and Michael Johnson, and I watched the 979 with Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis. I mean, I just think rivalry is really important, and that's a start. I mean, I think that'll grab eyes, and from there, we just got to try to capitalize on it, I feel like. But I just don't feel like there's enough rivalry in our sport.
Well, there's, I mean, there is. We all know that, what I mean? Like, all know about right. But that's the point, right? Like, we know the rivalries. We know who don't like who. We know who wants to race who in the background, but those narratives aren't being told. Imagine, and there's some nuance to this, right? But let's take the early part of the year, track and field wise. You got the Olympic trials, COVID issues aside, you got the Olympic trials in July, right? What if around, I don't know, April on the professional scene, what if there was a circuit of, racing competitions? Like, what if all the 100-meter guys in America had to go to a meet in Vegas where you had to run 2 or 300s that day, or 2 or 3 60s that day, 3 against 3, like a tournament style. Mm-hmm. And then the winners of that move on to the next round, and you do it in Miami. And then the next round is in New York, down the street in New York or something, something cool like that, something interesting like that. Not because those races would matter, but to build the interest for what is to come later, which are the real races, which are the circuit races. What if, forget Nike, Adidas, and all those other places. Because I mean, understand, we need the shoe companies, and they do a fantastic role in propping up what we do. But what if we don't? But we need to think bigger than that. We need, Coca-Cola. We need, Amazon. What if you get those companies to invest in having an actual American circuit? Yeah. So our people don't have to be beholden to the Diamond League. The only reason that the Diamond League is the Diamond League is because it's the biggest thing paying the most money. Mm-hmm. I don't imagine that there aren't American companies that could throw a circuit together in this country and outbid, that scene. Yeah. So when the best of our people have to spend all their time in Europe, like, the Europeans know our people more than we do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that's like when Tiana goes to Europe, or when Tiana goes to Asia and she walks through the street, like, people run up to her. When she walks through the competition, people run up. Oh my God, it's Tiana. Can you sign something? Tiana goes to the mall. Don't nobody know who she is. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's crazy to me. Crazy. So, we do such a bad job of promoting ourselves. We do such a bad job of that. And, I don't know who the people are that are overseers of that, but even in an Olympic year, we do a bad job of it. Like, we pay just enough attention, we give just enough shine to people, for the little build up into the Olympics and for the little 2-3 week pocket that it exists in. But when you emerge from the Olympics, everyone knows and continues to know Simone Biles, and rightfully so, because she's phenomenal, right? But Simone Biles, there are equivalents in our sport. And every cycle, we might have one person that pops out. Yeah. Like, you might have one person like Allison who's readily identifiable. and that's cool. But are Allison's individual performances that much better than any other gold medalist that we have? No. Is her story more compelling? Absolutely not. There are much more compelling stories in this game. I mean, from every angle. And so we need to get away from the model where we pick and choose the one or two athletes who are going to be our stars on purpose, and start telling everybody's narrative, and let the public decide who they love.
Yeah, I agree. Well, man, I'm not going to, last question I want to ask you, what's the future looking like for you at Cal? And you guys got the Athletics LLC going, what's the future looking like for Charles Ryan?
Oh, man, listen, the COVID situation, for me, like I said earlier, you got to adjust to the things that life throws at you, right? So for me, and I think for a lot of us in this industry, we're capitalizing on the opportunities that COVID has presented to us. The LLC thing is dope. I'm super proud to be a part of it. I was honored when Chris Huffins and Mike Holloway asked me to be, the third wheel in that thing. And so, we don't have any intention on shutting that down. It's only going to continue to get better as we progress through the year. And so that's a cool opportunity, and I'm happy to have it. And from the feedback that we've been getting, people seem to be not only entertained by it, but learn a lot from it. So it's a cool thing, and that's going to continue. Another way that I felt I needed to take advantage of this time that was been gifted to me through the tragedy of a pandemic is, I'm gonna bite the bullet and finally go back to school. I just applied for graduate school, and I'm gonna go ahead and finally finish my second degree. That's something that I've been talking about doing for a while, just haven't pulled the trigger on it. And so I'm gonna get that done. And from the perspective of Berkeley, man, like I'm in a fabulous position to continue to do what I always do, which is rebuild programs and turn them into champions. Robin Johnson is our leader, and I am humbled that she gave me the opportunity to come home and serve the student athletes at UC Berkeley, a school that I grew up around. Cal was literally the first track practice I ever had was at Edwards Stadium. Like, I've always been, aware of the program and the history of it, and wanted to be affiliated with it somehow. But as an athlete, when I was coming out of high school, it wasn't a viable option for me. Yeah. Not because of the school issue. I mean, I got into UCLA, I could get into Cal. But, athletically, they weren't doing a job that I felt I should tie myself to. Mm-hmm. And so with all of us coming in now, Robin being raised here, this is a homecoming for her, homecoming for me. Like, to me, I think this is a fantastic opportunity to build this thing into a national championship program. And that's the only goal I have. I mean, we're running one of probably the premier sprint swim program in the United States. And if the swim team at Cal can be top flight and, produce Olympians and win national championships, there's no reason that we can't do the exact same thing on the track. So our goal is to build this thing in the image that we want to build it in. Luckily for me, Robin is committed to having a real sprint hurdle program. And so we're going to find the best kids all over the world and bring them in and try to upset the apple cart, kick in the door, take our seat at the table. Like, that's what I do. That's what I've always done.
That's what you do.
and it's going to get done here. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but not as long as people probably imagine it's going to take. Like, we're grinding it out, and we're going to get the right people in place, and we're going to make this a real challenge real fast. So, I'm excited about it. All opportunities are an attempt to evolve, and I think we should all be living in a constant state of evolution. Mm-hmm. And luckily for me, I get to do it at home. So I'm with my family, and that's the professional side of it. And then the only other thing that I have going on is obviously being fortunate enough to be working with my best friend, which is Tiana Bartoletta, and the last the last dance, if you will, for her. She is the defending Olympic champion, and she has no intention of handing that title over. She's been through a lot of medical issues in the past 2 years, and when you go through those things and people start to doubt you and people start to question your ability to do what you've always found a way to do, just because you might be, in some people's opinion, a little older or whatever. Like, anybody that's sleeping on that girl is sorely mistaken. She's healthy. She's healthy for the first time in 2 years, and the things that she's doing in practice are scary. And I'm honored to be a part of Team TB, and we're gonna go make this run, and we'll see what comes of it. But there's a lot going on there, and I'm smiling every day when she's out there doing her thing as well. So, like I said, the COVID situation, like it took away my ability to have an outdoor season. It took away my ability to spend time with my kids every day and do the thing that I get up every day to do as coach, right? Well, luckily, being able to work with T, I still get to satisfy that itch every day. So, I have nothing to complain about, man. I'm in a very, very fortunate scenario all around.
Yeah.
For my professional life, my personal life, I get to do what I do every day. I'm surrounded by my family. And so I'm good, man. I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, and we just gonna keep pushing forward.
Nice. Listen, that was supposed to be the last question, but when you brought up Tiana, I thought about her blog, and then it made me think about this whole missed drug test thing. I forgot to ask you about that.
Oh yeah, no, brother, I got nothing but time. We can talk about anything.
I forgot to ask you. What's your opinion on all these missed drug tests?
Man, listen. People will accuse me of bias when it comes to anything related to Tiana, and that's fair. That's my best friend. I am absolutely biased. But if you do your research and you know who that girl is, you know that she writes, and that's what she does. Like, Tiana is famous for saying, like, the least interesting thing about her is what she does on the track. And that is absolutely true. So Tiana is the person who took shots at her employer, Nike, over the Mary Kane situation. If you haven't seen that blog, scroll through her blogs and read the Mary Kane blog. Like, Tiana don't have a problem speaking about anything. And so the missed drug test issue, that particular blog sparked a lot of conversation, and rightfully so. But if you really read it, it was an open letter where she was giving advice and trying to teach people how to be professionals. Yeah. Tiana been a pro since 2005, and she's done it clean, and she's done it the right way. And I was having this conversation the other day with a colleague of mine. If you really, really think about it, like I said, our sport has been sullied by big, big stars, rightfully or wrongfully, being tied up in doping scandals. Some of them real doping scandals where people were actually cheating. Some perceived doping scandals where choices that they've made have, dimmed the light of their star. And it's sad. And as fans, it costs us opportunities. It robs us of a moment to cheer for these people. And ESPN runs and puts that out in the public. But they don't talk about the narratives. They don't talk about the stories. They don't talk about, where these kids came from and all that they've overcome. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a bad look for our sport. And so the point that she made in that blog, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is do your job. Like, do your job. It ain't just Christian who's missed tests. Hell, there's 3 or 4 Americans right now that are about to be or are serving suspensions for whereabouts failures. The women's 400 meter champion from Doha, the young lady from Bahrain, who I'm a huge fan of. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that girl's the world record holder, because the only two performances above her time we know ain't real. So as far as I'm concerned, I watched the world record in 2019. She's gonna miss the Olympics. And why? Because you can't be where you said you was gonna be. So to me, and we talked about it on LLC, I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who are not acting professional. My job comes with certain tenets, certain things that I have to do, certain places I have to be, certain ways I have to conduct business. And if I choose to conduct my business outside of those laws, then whatever comes my way, that's my fault. I can't make excuses. I can't try to create false narratives. I can't whine and complain. I have to own my mistakes, and I have to take what comes. Like, that's the game. That's the job. And for me, as a person who never had the opportunity, to run on that stage, I was good, but I never made world class. I never made an Olympic team. I never put the Team USA jersey on. I didn't do those things. To me, the higher you climb in any profession, the more responsibility comes with your head. Now, when I was the head coach at Academy of Art University, and I've talked about this on other podcasts before, when I took that seat, I was happy to come back home and be a head coach. But I took that seat. When I took that seat, I knew that I was the youngest head coach in our industry, and I knew that I was an African American man. And I knew that if I screw this up somehow, not only is that a bad look for me, but it's going to be a collective bad look for us. Mm-hmm. And if I screw up, if I do something wrong, if I cheat, if I break rules, it's going to cost other people who look like me an opportunity down the road. And that's not right, but it is reality. So when these athletes put themselves in such bad positions, I don't have any sympathy for what comes. I want to see the best athletes compete, and I want to know that they're doing it clean. A lot of people who complain about our testing policies don't seem to understand the true nature of how they work. It ain't hard to be at home. It's not. There's no reality where 24/7, 365, you have to be on pins and needles waiting for these testers. No, that's not the way that works. You set the appointment. You say, every day I'm available for this hour. I'm putting it in writing. I'm going to be available every day from this time. Mm-hmm. And if they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. So you know what? Set the time at a time where you know you're going to be home. Yeah. Like, I'm always home at 6 a.m. Yeah. You're not gonna catch me somewhere else at 6 a.m.
It seems like that's a normal thing. Like, Yana was saying in her blog, and also I interviewed Manuel Mitchell. He said the same thing. I set my time from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. because I'm gonna be at home at that time. I'm not,
Bro, listen, it's not hard. It's not difficult. I mean, I got a ring doorbell every time I'm gone. Trust me, I know who's at my door. My phone tells me. It's not hard to do. So the idea that anybody would set their own appointment, miss it, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then when the authorities come at you, it's someone else's problem. You know what I mean? Like, but in relation to Tiana's blog, like, you beat it once. You got to pass the first time, and then you did it again. Yeah. And it's like, come on, man. Like, we want to see you run. Tiana is a fan of that boy. They run for the same company. Hell, they went to the same school. Yeah. She's a fan. And she was trying to offer perspective because all we've seen in the public are excuses and, finger pointing. No one likes to step up and own their mistakes anymore in any sport, right? It's always, Drew Brees says some stupid stuff, in the middle of everybody protesting. He says some stupid shit, and then he's acting like, wait, well, what did I say? Like, you know what you said, it was stupid. And it did, and the firestorm didn't calm down until he realized, actually, I needed to shut the hell up and own what I said. Yes, you do. Like, you got to own up to your mistakes. And when people do that, some people will be willing to listen and maybe give you another opportunity, or maybe give you a pass. But if all you're doing is stepping out there making excuses, the backlash is going to be even worse than the transgression. I sit here right now and I tell you straight up, like, I don't believe Christian Coleman is dirty, not for a second. I don't believe Tim Hall would be associated with a dirty athlete, not for a second. Tim is fantastic, and he's great at what he does. He's one of the best at what he does in this world. I don't think Lonnie Green would allow either of these men to be on his campus pulling games like that. Yeah. No, I don't think there's anything dirty about that kid. Not at all. But it was unprofessional, and the way it's being handled is unprofessional. And, hopefully, people can get to him and explain that to him. And that's exactly, what T's writing was. They don't have a relationship. They're not friends. They don't know each other like that. So since this whole thing was already playing out in public, she stepped out with her pen and was like, hey, dude, listen to this. Like, take it this way. You might want to conduct yourself in this manner because we just want to see you run.
Yeah.
And so, whenever that girl gets some fire beneath her and she starts to feel passionate about an issue, best believe she's gonna put a pen to it, and whatever's in the way is gonna be said. Like, she has no fear. So it's part of who she is. It's part of what she does. And if anybody that if you're a fan of writing, if you're a fan of athletes doing more than what they're supposed to do, Laura Ingraham gets on Fox News and tells LeBron to shut up and dribble. Nah, he ain't gonna shut up and dribble. Tiana's not gonna shut up and jump. Like, she gonna have her voice, and she's gonna speak on anything that she feels that she can speak to. And when she does, it's usually pretty epic. And that particular subject matter wasn't any different. So, shout out to my girl. Shout out, to Tiana B. Her blog is at tianab.com, and it's fabulous, man. Like, she writes about everything. Social justice. She, it's Fibroid Awareness Month, and she got one coming out on fibroids, which is the medical issue that almost took her life. Like, that girl can write, man.
Oh man, anything else you want to add for the sake of the track and field world?
Just, you know what, I actually do. I want to shout out to two different things. I mean, people like yourself who have taken this time in COVID and done things that are helping the sport. I appreciate the guts that it takes to step out and put yourself out there like this. Mm-hmm. And you guys are all, and then, there's 20 different, style podcast platforms that people are doing these days. And they're all very good. And like I said, it takes guts to put yourselves out there like that. So I want to thank you specifically and everybody else that's doing that kind of stuff, because it's made everything better. It's made this time, mentally, doable, and there's people paying attention to the content you and everybody else are putting out. So props to you on that, man, and keep doing that kind of stuff. And then I want to give a special shout out to another one of my LLC, co-conspirators, if you will. Marissa Chu, man, listen, what Chu decided to put together with the whole coaches collab thing, man, like, I hope everybody has a true understanding and appreciation for what she's done and what it takes to get that stuff done every week. Like, she's committed a lot of herself to that, and it's been fabulous. And it's so many people are learning and interacting and growing from it. And because it's track and field, it doesn't get the attention it deserves. Case in point, if you watch the ESPN these last couple of weeks, they've been doing a profile on my high school coach. His name's Alonzo Carter. Alonzo Carter is the current running backs coach for San Jose State University. West Oakland, born and raised, used to be a dancer for MC Hammer. Like, Zoe's my guy. Saved my life as a teen. But he's the coach at San Jose State, and he decided in the time of COVID that he was going to have a weekly coaches call on Zoom with African-American coaches from across the country, and they would discuss, business and social justice issues and kind of how we can do better. And so his thing grew pretty fast, and it went from like 50 coaches to like 300 coaches to, like 20, like a real big pocket of coaches that are doing the same exact thing. And he does it once a week, and his star has exploded over it. They got him on ESPN talking about it. They interviewing him on Outside the Lines, and it's beautiful to see. And I'm proud of that man, and he deserves all the shine he's getting. But Chu did the exact same thing at a much bigger scale.
Yes.
And she's covering every aspect, because football is just one thing. Like, we got 21 different sports within our thing, right? And she's doing women's issues, and she's doing social justice stuff. And because it's track and field, no one's paying attention to it. So, shout out to Chu, man. Like, it's incredible. And, I just wish people outside of us were paying attention to it, because the work that she's putting in and things that she's set in motion are helping thousands of coaches across this country. And it's beautiful, and I couldn't be prouder of her for it.
Well, I thank you for doing that. I interviewed her, but like I said, give Chu her roses while she's here. In other words, because
right.
She's doing is amazing, very amazing. So thank you, Chu. Charles, thank you, man, for doing this. Thanks for coming on. I guess we'll, I'll see. I'm gonna watch the Athletics LLC when it comes out. I'm guessing later on today, and enjoy that. So.
Oh yeah, it's funny. This was pretty good.
Well, man, again, thank you for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe, and good luck on your season.
Likewise, brother. I appreciate it.
All right.